Hello, I'm Bob Dudley with the Truck Product Group. Today we're going to go over the general maintenance for the RTI Arctic Pro RHS 980 RTI machine. This is the AC machine that's currently listed in the EPC. There's some things in the manual that are really not called out or specified when it comes to draining the vacuum pump oil. Just general maintenance is what I'd like to talk about today. So we're going to highlight those areas. First thing I'd like to go through is the vacuum pump oil replacement. Every 10 hours of service, the machine will prompt you to replace the vacuum pump oil. It's very important to replace the vacuum pump oil because, like all oils, they shear out of grade, they wear out basically. The additives drop out of them, especially with a vacuum pump. It'll collect moisture, and you'll notice sometimes that the oil through the sight glass, there's a sight glass back here that monitors the oil level, will get a little cloudy. And again, if you see that prior to the 10 hours, you also want to replace that oil ahead of time, prior to the 10 hours. And you can get into that area of maintenance through the maintenance options on the machine. And again, after 10 hours, the machine will prompt you. It won't shut the machine down. It'll prompt you to replace the vacuum pump oil. So you may be in the middle of a service and it'll come up during that service, but continue your service. Don't hit yes, I'm going to replace that vacuum pump oil, because you may forget. Things get busy. And go ahead and continue your service, finish it. As soon as you're done your service, go back, get into the maintenance options on the machine, and then hit yes, replace that vacuum pump oil. And it's always good to replace the vacuum pump oil when the vacuum pump is still warm. That way the oil's a lot thinner, you'll get a lot more to drain out, it'll drain out quicker because it's a little time consuming to replace this vacuum pump oil. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to hit the down arrow. Until I get to setup. Then I'm going to hit yes, setup, start. Then I'm going to hit the down arrow again because I'm in selectable options. That's how I'm going to get the maintenance options. Maintenance options, I'm going to hit yes. Perform calibration check, yes or no. We can perform a calibration check. You can do that because that's going to be the first prompt that comes up prior to getting to the vacuum pump oil. It's very easy to do. Your machine comes with a steel ball. I keep it in a plastic bag because it keeps the corrosion off the ball. You want to keep it clean, nick-free. So I'm going to select yes. Then it's going to prompt me here. It says attach weight to bottom of the machine. And sometimes it's hard to remember where to attach that weight. So what I do, it's always where your handles are. I get back behind the machine, and on the right side behind the machine where the little pocket is, it holds the manual. It's right behind that smaller wheel in the front, the little caster wheel. There's a little post that sticks down. It's a magnetic post that the ball attaches to. Okay, I attached my calibration weight to the bottom of the machine on the little magnetic post. Just like the machine prompted me to do. It says continue. I'm going to hit yes. Calibration approved. Remove the weight. Now I continue on. With the down arrow, I'm going to get to perform vacuum pump oil replacement. I'm going to hit yes, because that's what I want to do. Now that we've calibrated the machine, hit yes. That's telling me to refer to the manual for complete instructions for a vacuum oil change. Again, the manual will only give you a certain amount of instructions. It's just not a matter of draining it. There's certain steps you have to do. You just can't drain it, fill it back to capacity, and turn the machine on. Again, this vacuum pump is already warmed up, and the oil will drain out quicker. So again, it's really good to do that right after service so you don't forget. Just going to undo the tank. Just kind of move it out of the way. They don't put a very long hose on here, but it's not going to hurt it. So I'm going to put this right underneath the drain port. The drain port's a little knob, little brass knob right below the sight glass tube. And all you got to do is open it up. Just turn it a few turns, and the oil will start draining out. Open it all the way up. And you want that oil to drain out quicker, take off the cap, take off the fill cap. It'll release, so you're not creating a vacuum in our displacement of the oil. See, it comes out much faster when you take the fill cap off, which you're going to have off anyway when you're putting new oil in, so put it up on your tray. And then allow it to drain. Okay, while the vacuum pump oil is draining, again, after 10 hours, we're draining the vacuum pump oil. At the same time, there's two inline filters located in here, in these high and low side hoses. And what that does is, when you're recovering a system, it protects the internals of the machine just in case there's a lot of debris in the system. I'll give you an example. I pulled an orifice tube out of the last service I did, and it's pretty gunked up, pretty typical for these GMJH trucks, as you all know by now. So as I'm recovering that, there's still the contamination still in the oil, and it's in the refrigerant, but mostly in the oil because, you know, the oil mixes with the refrigerant. It's going to carry back through into the machine. Well, it's going to collect on these inline filters that are in these fittings where the service hoses hook up. We're going to remove and replace those at the same time, because if you don't replace those, what happens is when you recharge your system, because all the debris collects on the outside of the filter, can push the debris right back in the system when it recharges. So I hope that makes sense. And that's why we replace those after every 10 hours, or why we're replacing the vacuum pump oil. Do that at the same time. You also should replace these filters, whether you're replacing the vacuum pump or not, again, if you have a contaminated system, just like I showed you with this orifice tube. The vacuum pump oil could have been changed just recently, but then you have a contaminated system that with a lot of debris in it, you're pulling the refrigerant oil in, and you're going to plug up those filters, and then you're going to push that debris right back in the system again. So if you have a system with a lot of debris, you must replace those inline filters. It's a good practice, especially on the high side. You'll notice more of the contaminant will be on that filter on the high side. And the reason for that is where the high side service port is located, and the low side service port's located on the accumulator. It's up kind of out of the way of the oil. It's suspended up. The oil's in the bottom of the accumulator, and it's recovering mostly refrigerant. Where on the high side, you're recovering a lot of oil and refrigerant because of where the service port fitting is located. So you'll probably notice a lot of the times that inline filter on the low side is much cleaner than the high side. So the first thing I want to do is make sure that my gauges are at zero. There's no pressure or refrigerant inside those hoses. And you just look at your gauges. They must be 0 or below. And I'm going to unscrew the service lines. And what I'm going to do is unscrew these brass fittings that house the inline filters. So I'm going to take a 5/8 inch open end wrench, and I'm going to use that as a backup wrench because I'm going to hold the top fitting in place. We don't want that to turn. And I use a 5/8 deep socket with an extension to get you out of the way of the handle. Okay, loosen those up. They should spin off by hand. Now that I got the fitting off, this is the high side. I'm going to take the filter out. It's located right in the top of this thing. And note the direction that this thing comes out. You want to make sure you put it back the same way, in the same direction. So it's a little cone. It goes right in here. And I'm going to install the new filter. Screw it in. Finger tight. Remove the low side. And as you notice, the low side, again, I mean, it's very, very clean. But I have it out, I'm going to replace it, so I'm going to put a new filter in that as well. And when you put these back in, you may want to put a little oil on that O-ring. And I'm going to tighten them back up. Again, use my backup wrench. Then I'm going to reconnect my service hoses, low side. And I remember it came off to the inside. High side to the high side, because again, it's indicated with a red mark up top. So after I get those filters replaced, by that time, my vacuum pump oil has completely drained out. It stopped draining. So I'm going to close the drain port. The oil's pretty dark. I took out about 16 ounces of oil. So that's what's going to need to go back in this thing, give or take a little bit of oil, okay? There's almost 16 ounces of oil in this thing. So again, you want to close the drain port, and now I'm going to fill it up. Okay, now I'm going to install the new oil. This is RTI's oil. It's listed in the EPC. In the AC tools section in the EPC, the inline filters are listed there as well. What I did, I got like a ketchup bottle. You can go get a ketchup bottle or any bottle like this. And I already pre-measured this one. This will hold about 8 ounces of vacuum pump oil. But you want to try. If you have to get a measuring cup to mark your thing first, go ahead and measure out 8 ounces of oil and just put it in like a ketchup bottle. And you can purchase those local, or if you have something laying around your shop. So then what I do, I know about where that 8 ounces is because I've done this so many times. It's pretty close to the top. So I'm going to fill this up. Again, we know the system's about 16 ounce capacity, but I'm only going to start out with 8 ounces of oil, and I'll tell you why as we go along. So I pretty much fill that up. This little pointed cap really helps and makes it a lot easier to get the oil in the vacuum pump because it's pretty meticulous. It goes in very slow. So you have a sight glass here. You'll notice some residual oil laying in the bottom of the sight glass. That's okay. You're not going to get it all out. You can tip it back and forth if you want to try to get it all out, but it's not going to matter. There's just a little bit of residual oil left in the bottom. So I just put a towel down here. And I'll get this full 8 ounce bottle, and I'm not going to run the vacuum pump because there's basically no oil in it, very little oil. So I'm going to put that, I'm going to squeeze it in just a little at a time. You can watch the sight glass, that way you know you're not going to overflow back out of the hole. But it takes a little bit of time to do that. And you'll know if you're putting too much in because it'll start spilling out the top. It takes a little time to do this. So I put 8 ounces of oil in this thing. I'm going to fill this up again with another 8 ounces. Now before I put the remainder of this 8 ounces in, I'm going to put about half of it in. I'm going to continue to fill this up. I'm going to go with about half of it. Okay, now that I got about another half, just a couple more ounces in there. I'm going to put the cap back on this thing. I'm going to reset the machine to the main menu. And then I'm going to vacuum. I'm going to hit just the vacuum mode. I'm going to hit the vacuum pump. It's going to check for pressures again. Make sure that there's no positive pressure before it starts to pull the vacuum. It's going to ask me to perform an oil injection. Of course, no. It's going to ask me to enter the time of vacuum. Mine defaults to 30 minutes. So I'm just going to leave it there. It doesn't matter at this point. What I'm trying to do is take the oil that's in there, run it through the vacuum pump. And as it's running through the vacuum pump, I'm going to leave the cap on for 2 minutes while it's running. After 2 minutes, I'm going to pull the cap off. And while I'm looking at the sight glass, I'm going to pour the remainder of the oil in the vacuum pump so it disperses properly. As it's running, I'm going to watch the oil level through the sight glass, and I want to make sure that it doesn't go over half full. So you want to continue to fill it up because it'll use it and use it and use it until it finally evens out at halfway full. You don't want to overfill it. If you overfill it, it'll decrease the performance of the vacuum pump. They're a little touchy. So I'm going to hit enter vacuum time, yes, continue. Perform a leak test, I'm just going to hit no. It's going to perform a vacuum. So again, I'm going to let that run for about 2 minutes to circulate the oil. I have a little LED flashlight. I'm getting ready to put the remainder of the oil in. It's ran for about 2 minutes. I'm going to pull the cap off and I'm going to fill it. I'm going to watch that oil level as I'm slowly squeezing this in there. You can squeeze it in, gets up to full, back it off. You want to continue to feed it the oil and then wait a few minutes, a few seconds, and you'll see it come back down to even, knowing that it's a 16 ounce system, and that's what I took out of it. I'm going to continue to put oil in it. Yeah, continue to add until the oil level drops down to even. If you happen to put too much oil in, then you can drain it down until the level indicator, the oil's even with the level indicator. I put the remainder of my oil in, but it's just maybe a 1/16 of an inch above the oil full mark with the level indicator, oil level indicator. So I'm just going to drain a little bit out until it's even. It's dead even. I'm going to reinstall my cap, check the oil level again, and that should complete the service. Now that the filters are changed and I have new vacuum pump oil, and I reset my oil change to yes to change the oil, it'll run another 10 hours before it gives me another notification. And or if you happen to see this oil get a little cloudy, again, moisture will cause that. You may have to change it before the 10 hours is up. That's up to you. So I'm going to reinstall the tank, secure it. I like to keep track of every time I perform a service on this, so I made myself a little sheet that I stapled to the inside back cover. I got the date, I got the technician, which is me, and comments, whatever you do to the machine, whether it's you calibrate it, change the inline filters or change the vacuum pump filters. I always date it, put my name and what I did. It just helps you keep track of the maintenance on this machine. And if you ever do have a breakdown, it really helps with warranty as well. And that should be about it. So thank you very much. If you have any questions concerning this service, please feel free to give me a call. My extension is 460-214 at the U-Haul Technical Center. Thank you very much.